Okay, welcome back everyone. We begin with our fifth chapter of history, class 6, and yeah, we'll try to finish it off as quickly as possible without missing any details, as usual. Right, so chapter 5, Kingdoms, Kings, and an Early Republic. Election day. Shankaran woke up to see his grandparents all ready to go and vote. They wanted to be the first to reach the polling booth. There's a slight um, the way this particular sentence is written. I don't really affirm that. Anyway, why were they so excited? Shankaran wanted to know. Somewhat impatiently, his grandfather explained, "We can choose our own rulers today." How some men became rulers. Choosing leaders or rulers by voting is something that has become common during the last 50 years or so. How did men become rulers in the past? Some of the Rajas we read about in chapter 4 were probably chosen by the Jana, the people. But around 3000 years ago, we find some changes taking place in the ways in which Rajas were chosen. So, one thing that we can all agree on is the fact that this 3000 years would come out to be 1000 BC, because in this book they have stated in the very first chapter itself that the reference point will be 2000. The present day is 2000, and that would be taken as the reference point. So if we say 3000 years ago, then it is 1000 BC. So around 1000 BC is another important takeaway, where when we talk about 1000 BC is the fact that it is during the later Vedic period. So this is late Vedic period, right? So during the later Vedic period, what we can take away from this particular line is the fact that rajas or rulers which previously existed, they weren't um, like the way in which these people were made the rulers had started to change. So the system in administration had begun to change during the later Vedic period, that is 1000 BC, and we'll see how. We find some changes taking place in the ways in which Rajas were chosen. Some men now became recognized as Rajas by performing very big sacrifices. So, people who offered very big sacrifices. Now, this big sacrifice and all is to prove their military prowess, to prove that they have a very strong military force and to dominate, and that they had the power to dominate over the other people. And so that was the main that was the important task, that was the most important feature of doing these big sacrifices. And so by performing those big sacrifices, some people established or recognized, some people got recognized as rajas, right? So the ashwamedha or horse sacrifice was one such ritual. So that's the other important thing. What other sacrifice that we're talking about? It is the Ashwamedha or horse sacrifice. A horse was, so what happens really is that a horse is let loose and it is allowed to wander freely, and it was guarded by, so with the horse, Raja's people would also be sent along with the horse to protect it, right? So if the horse wanders and enters into a kingdom of some other Raja and they stop it, and if it enters their kingdom and that Raja stops this Raja's horse, then it would mean that it is an invitation to fight, and whoever fights and wins, uh, that kingdom belong to that person. Okay. So if the horse wandered into the kingdom and they stopped it, they had to fight. If they allowed the horse to pass, however, if the horse enters and they allow the horse to pass, then it would mean that they had accepted the Raja whose horse it was as their as the one who would also possess their kingdom. So these rajas were then invited. Now, and that they accepted that raja who wanted to perform the sacrifice, who accepted that the raja whose horse had entered into their kingdom was stronger than them. That's what it would mean. And later, when the horse, there are only two possibilities with the horse. Either the horse would be stopped by someone, right? Was stopped. I would think that they would probably kill the horse. So problem solved, right? It is an invitation to fight. The horse stopped there. Two kingdoms fight, and one kingdom belonged to one raja. Is what I would presume. Now it's not written anywhere whether stopping of the horse means killing the horse, or stopping of the horse just means stopping the horse and just fighting. I don't know. So it would definitely, I think it is killing the horse or just stopping the horse by any means necessary. So yeah. Anyway, so and the other thing that can happen is the fact that the horse, after traveling all of these places, would return back to the kingdom. So if that happens, then it would mean that the people near around, all of the neighbors are okay with the fact that this is the strongest Raja of all, and therefore he is the supreme Raja, something like that. Okay, so yeah, so when the horse returns back, when all of this thing is over, all of those kings through whose land this horse went, they will be invited to the Supreme Raja's court, to the Supreme Raja's place, and then they will have to offer him gifts and whatnot, customs. These Rajas were then invited to the sacrifice, which was performed by the specially trained priests. Now, what happens is after years or so, when that horse comes back to the kingdom, then that horse will be killed anyway. Maybe that's the reason why it's called horse sacrifice. Because yeah, when it comes back, after praising the gods, like yeah, wow, good thing the horse really sent out a message, and we are very blessed, and therefore this horse should belong to the gods, and just kill the horse. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so that's the thing with the horse. It is doomed for sure. But other than that, what the other thing is in this whole thing is like all the neighboring kings who accepted the supreme Raja as the Raja would come to the sacrifice, and then while they come, they will give him gifts and whatnot. And these sacrifices are done by specially trained priests who were rewarded with gifts. Yeah, so if the whole thing was a success, then obviously the priests who performed the ritual will be given gifts. The Raja who organized the sacrifice was recognized as being very powerful, and all those who came brought gifts to him. Yeah, like I said. The Raja was a central figure in these rituals. He often had a special seat, so all that things of pomp, a special seat, a throne, tiger skin, to show that he is the supreme leader and what. Yeah, I'll mark it in pink just to, yeah. His charioteer, who was his champion in the battlefield and witnessed his exploits, chanted tales of his glory. His relatives, especially his wives and sons, had to perform a variety of minor rituals. The other Rajas were simply spectators who had to sit and watch the performance of the sacrifice. Priests performed the rituals, including the sprinkling of sacred water on the king. The ordinary people, the Vish or the Vaishya, also brought gifts. Obviously, who would want to get executed? No one. So everyone wanted to make the king happy. Therefore, they brought gifts. Summary execution. If people didn't bring gifts, why not? Brought gifts. So people feared, is what I can understand from this. People feared the Supreme Raja. However, some people, such as those who were regarded as Shudra, भाई उनसे कुछ नहीं हो सकता. Which is what I think is why these people are not allowed to enter into rituals like these. absolute bogus concepts of caste here. Like the Varna system introduced in the Vedas should have never been a part of, like Aryans, man. Can't help it. Introduction of race was supposed to be was a part of history, had to be that way, till we arrived at this point that we realized that no, it is not a good thing. Racism and all of these sorts should not ever have existed ever. Yeah, but what to do at that period of time? As highly a king could have been, but as lowly as that of a measly skunk. What is the point in living life if you don't have thinking which resembles, if your thoughts are not good, if your thoughts are not good, then what's the point? What is the point in having all the money, all the might, skills, everything just goes to be a waste. So it's, but anyway, that's history and we're studying the subject, so let's not divert. So Shudras were not allowed to enter into pompous ceremonies like this, right? And by the priests. However, some people, such as those who were regarded as Shudras by the priests, were excluded from many rituals. They were like untouchables, right? Anyway, so make a list of all those who would be present at the sacrifice, which are the categories that are described in terms of their occupation. Yeah, so we have like Varnas, right? All of those three people. Mm, we have the Brahmins, we have Kshatriyas, and we have Brahmin, Kshatriyas, and there is this third Vaishya, those who are the traders and merchants and whatnot. Fourth is Shudra and Untouchables, and there was one more which was below that also, but I think it just got mixed because there was no point whatsoever. Anyway, Varnas. We have many books that were composed in North India, especially in the areas drained by the Ganga and the Yamuna. So the thing that we have to realize over this period is the fact that people from the western, northwestern side, like Gujarat and Pakistan and all of those areas, people migrated for whatever reason from that place towards the um, upper, not central but north central, upper upper areas of India, um, and was moving towards that area, and that's this period when, yeah, people moving from the Sindhu region towards the Ganga and Yamuna part is what we can take over, is what is happening at this period of time. In this period, this movement is going on slowly and steadily, right? 1000 BC and all, that's what is happening. So these books are often called later Vedic because they were composed after the Rig Veda, about which you learnt in chapter 4. Okay, so after Rig Veda is what this other books maybe, but after Rig Veda we have the later Vedic period emerging. So in these books which came after Rig Veda are Samaveda, Yajurveda and Atharvaveda. So in order actually, I think Samveda came first, then I think Yajurveda came later, and then Atharvaveda was the last book to have been written or composed. These were composed by priests and described how rituals were to be performed. You do realize that when, and I think we studied that Rig Veda was written by, no, composed by sages, uh, and recited by the priests. But here we see that these three, Samaveda, Yajurveda, and Atharvaveda, are composed by priests. I am not sure whether priests and sages or rishis were the same people. I think there is a difference, otherwise, they wouldn't really be making it priests, they could have written sages, right? Let's just. Sage and priest. Sage is a wise person or spiritual teacher, a man or woman of gravity and wisdom, especially a teacher. Okay, so not much of a difference. I don't know. Let's just learn it here that. Oh, wait, I was searching in Bing, which means I should be searching here first. Sage and priest difference. Not really. Okay. Priest is a religious leader authorized to perform the sacred rituals of a religion, especially. I don't think there really is a lot of difference between priest and sage. I think it's probably the same. Yeah. But anyway, let's just keep that difference in the word in mind, right? So we studied that um, Rigveda were composed by the sages and uh, recited by the priests or told or taught by the priests. And here Samaveda, Yajurveda, and Atharveda are composed by the priests. There has to be some difference. There has to be, I'm certain. But I'm just not able to find it here now. And described how rituals were to be performed. They also contained rules about society. So, rules about society and how rituals were to be performed is what was written in these three books. Oh no. Right. So rituals were to be performed and how, and the rules about society were written in these three books: Samaveda, Yajurveda, and Atharvaveda. Right. There were several different groups in society at this time: priests and warriors, farmers, herders, traders, craftspersons, laborers, fishing folk, and forest people. Some priests and warriors were rich, as were some farmers and traders. Others, including many herders, craftspersons, laborers, fishing folk, and hunters and gatherers, were poor. Yeah, so the priests divided people into four groups called varnas. According to them, each varna had a different set of functions. The first varna was that of the Brahmin. Brahmin were expected to study and teach the Vedas. So Brahmins were to, um, as much as I do not want to do these parts, I cannot avoid this because it is our history. Okay, so the first Varna, the superior people, as we can think of, Brahmins, because they were the ones who formed it, so they can't think of themselves as lowly. I'll try to stick to, you know, the things that really should be of importance, but if I deviate, then I don't know, can't help it. Okay, so Varna was that of the Brahmin. Brahmin were expected to study and teach the Vedas, perform sacrifices, and receive gifts. Right. In the second place were the rulers, also known as Kshatriya. Then we have the rulers, because they are the ones who are ruling, right? So they are also superior class. No, but there's this other thing also. Instead, like it need not be that only the rulers are the ones who are kshatriyas. Even a warrior, even a person who is a soldier or a person who uh, has to do with council work and things related to administration were also placed under kshatriya. It's not only the rulers. It's not only restricted to rulers. Anyone who forms a part of fighting battles and protecting the people were all classified under this category of Kshatriyas. And the third were the Vish or Vaishya, people who were traders or farmers and all of these people would come under the term Vish or Vaishya. Vish itself means common people, right? Jana is what we learned in the last chapter, I guess. Yeah. So, and these are the people who were farmers, herders, and traders. Right. So both the Kshatriyas and the Vaishyas could perform sacrifices. So both Kshatriyas and Vaishyas could perform sacrifices, no problem. And last we have the Shudras, the people who really wouldn't have any meaning in its existence as they would have thought at that period of time, who had to serve the other three groups. So their job is to be servants for the other three groups. Often, women were also grouped with the Shudras because they felt for some reason that women do not really have anything to do or any purpose as such. There were people who were just hopeless, is what they felt. So both women and Shudras were not allowed to study the Vedas. So both the women and the Shudras could not study Vedas because Veda is something for those people who are having some standards, and these people do not have any standards. Yeah. So the priest also said that these groups were decided on the basis of birth. Now, this is where things get even more interesting. So, it's like a bonded form of, a bonded form of cruelty towards humanity. If you're born in that particular lineage, then you are that lineage. Then you resemble that lineage and you will not change. You will always be known as a person of that lineage. For example, if one's father and mother were Brahmins, one would automatically become a Brahmin and so on. So, if someone is born into a Brahmin family, he will be a Brahmin. Yeah, and later they classified some people as untouchables. That's what happened to Shudras and all, right? So these included some crafts. Okay, so they people went ahead to describe that even some Vaishya, some people who fall under the Vaishya category, because I think we read that craftspersons were also Vaishyas. Did we? No, we did not. Okay, fine. So, but these people weren't classified as something, so they decided, okay, since they people also have a low existence in life, as what they felt, they were also classified as untouchables or Shudras. So, craftspersons were included, hunters and gatherers were included, and people who helped perform the burials and cremations were also regarded as untouchables, right? The priest said that contact with these groups was polluting. Yeah, polluting was polluting. Many people did not accept the system of varna laid down by the Brahmins. Some kings thought that they were superior to the priests. Yeah, obviously, there's this thing, right? When you've done so much and you have so much might and you have teachers saying to you that they are bigger than you, then obviously you would have some questions as to how someone can question your authority or existence. The kings felt it too. I mean, the poor people didn't have any opinion, right? So the poor, I mean, the people who were termed as the untouchables didn't really have a mind of their own, right? So they never really questioned anything. Plus, who would they question? If they questioned, they would get killed. Probably. Yeah. So, some kings thought they were superior to the priests, and others felt that birth could not be a basis for. Now, these are the proper philosophists, people who people who would really think about philosophy and having some basic idea about, that wasn't their choice kind of a people. So, birth could not be a basis for deciding which varna people belonged to. Exactly. But it just happened that powerful people were more than people who were desperate. So suppression was a normal course of action without any democracy, of course. So, besides, some people felt that there should be no difference amongst people based on occupation. Others felt that everybody should be able to perform rituals, and others condemned the practice of untouchability. Also, there were many areas in the subcontinent, such as the Northeast, where social and economic differences were not very sharp, and where the influences of the priests was limited. So they say that in the northeastern regions, the influence of priest was limited. But you know what? If this thing really has, even in northeast or all throughout India, I'm pretty sure at that period of time, this social stigma existed anywhere, everywhere. That caste and a system like this is there, is what I feel. Could be. I could be wrong, yeah. But that stigma was there all throughout India, pretty sure. Right, moving on. Okay, why did people oppose the system of Varnas? A good question, except people just gave. So these are just opinions, right? Nothing really happened with regard to opposing the Varnas at that period of time, because the people who were powerful really had a lot of control over the people who were downtrodden, and there was military might. Now, when we talk about 1000 BC, and when we say that there was a change in the way the kings were elected, and there was a change in the way the kings um, were recognizing themselves as kings, and we say that military might and all, the idea about a community forming a ruler was over, and the idea of kings having large armies and kings maintaining these armies to protect the people, this thing started emerging. So what happened was, over the period of time, kings with its military became very powerful, and therefore they could control the common people. Now it is just thought. Okay, now a person who is a very lowly person, his opinions wouldn't make any difference. But we are not even talking about those people. We are talking about upper caste people who are thinking about the fact that this birth related varna should not be the case. But he is not going to be, it's not going to be imposed on the whole politics itself, because the king's mind itself is corrupted. He doesn't want that people who are downtrodden be able to overthrow them in any way possible, right? So it was just opinions, and nothing could be done about it. People opposed, like the only people who opposed was those who really thought about uh, you know rational thinking. Who had rational thinking were the people who opposed the system of varnas. Otherwise, I don't think anyone would have opposed it. Lowly people never really had a mind of their own, really. The system of slavery has been existing since then, and that's the sad truth about it. Janapad. The Rajas who performed these big sacrifices were now recognized as being Rajas of Janapad rather than Janas. The word Janapad literally means land where the Jana set its foot. So, what does Janapad mean? It is the land where the Jana set its foot and settled down. Some important Janapads are shown on map 4. We'll take a look at it, but let's just go with this. So, the Rajas who performed these big sacrifices, they came to be known as Janapads, right? And Janpad means the land where the people set its foot. So it also means that these rajas had the control over the land where the people set its foot, which means that including the people, everything that comes under that land will be under the rule of the raja, other than the normal jana that we knew, that these people are being ruled or led by a particular raja. Now it includes the whole land itself. Archaeologists have excavated a number of settlements in these janapads, such as Purana Kila in Delhi, Hastinapur near Meerut, and Atranji Khera near Etah. The last two are in Uttar Pradesh. They found that people lived in huts and kept cattle as well as other animals. They also grew a variety of crops: rice, wheat, barley, pulses, sugar cane, sesame, and mustard. What's the new takeaway here? Sugarcane is new. Rice, wheat, barley, pulses we have seen. Sesame we had seen. Mustard was not there in the last chapter that we did. So, sugarcane and mustards emerged here. Yes, yeah. And something else I had seen here. Yeah, the people lived in huts and kept cattle. If you recall the Indus Valley civilization, we had proper baked bricks. We had houses built of proper baked bricks. But now we see that it has shifted. People now lived in huts which were made of mud and not made of bricks. So, I mean, I've been studying a little bit about this elsewhere also, and I realized that the concept of baked bricks and all were not seen when the move was made towards Ganga and Yamuna at this period of time. Anyway, let's look at this. Painted grey ware. Plates and bowls are the most common vessels made out of painted grey ware. These are extremely fine to touch with a nice, smooth surface. Perhaps these were used on special occasions for important people and to serve special food. So here we go. Let's take a good look at it because some patterns drawn into it. It looks good. Yeah, let's move on. So, is there a crop in this list that was not mentioned in chapter 3? Oh, we already did that. We have sugarcane and mustards, which was not mentioned in the last chapter. Oh, wait, in chapter 3. This is chapter 5, right? We need to go back just to see what exactly it is that they are, which crop it is that they're talking about here. I'm pretty sure. Uh, Chapter 2 is this chapter 3? Yes. Yes. Chapter 3. Let's see. I'm pretty sure we did do that. We did that. Hunted wild animals, goat, buffalo, cattle, sheep. Yeah. Wheat, barley, pulses, sesame, right? Oh, mustard was also there. Yeah, fine. So sugarcane is the only thing. Sugarcane is the only thing. Good thing we went back to check. So now we know, right? Yeah, so sugarcane is the thing that was new. We can exclude this. It was there. Sugarcane is the only new crop that came, was probably begun cultivation of, right? Yeah, and it's also important, like sugarcane. What it implies is the fact that people would have used the flavor of the juice, sugarcane juice, to mix with something and create sweets. Yes. So probably during the Vedic period itself, we can start seeing a change in the way people used to cook things. Maybe new dishes started arriving in the Vedic period, which was to do more towards sweets and sweet stuff. It's a good thought to think about. So if sugarcane started being cultivated at this period of time, it's a good thing to think about. Maybe, well, see, that's the beauty about NCRT. I don't know if it's a beauty about NCRT, about not completely telling the things what surrounds it, just lurking around the area, like throwing a bait and just luring the fishes around. That's how NCRT does things. Now you have to use your head and understand what exactly its implications are. Implications is what NCRT usually tries to let people. That's the reason why the videos extend over 1 hour, man. Because if you start realizing, if you start thinking about the implication of certain things, then you'll get to know that there was a cultural difference that was being created with the introduction of new things. Like now, sugarcane. I'm pretty sure, like sweets and all, or things which dishes which were sweet in nature started being more prominent during the later Vedic period because of cultivation of sugarcane. Possibilities, you know. Anyway, let's move on. They made earthen pots. Some of these were grey in color, others were red. One special type of pottery found at these sites is known as painted greyware, the one which we just saw. Okay, as is obvious from the name, these grey pots had painted designs. The one which we saw. Usually simple lines and geometric patterns. Nothing too fancy, nothing too elaborate or something, just simple patterns and stuff like that. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Mahajanapads. Mahajanapads. What do you gather from the name itself? Bigger Janapad, bigger Raja, bigger Raja, yes. So, about 2500 years ago, some Janapads became more important than others and were known as Mahajanapads. Some of these are shown on map 4. Most Mahajanapads had a capital city and many of these were fortified. This means that huge walls of brick, wood, or stone were built around them. Yes, so Mahajanapads, about 2500 years ago, meaning um, 500 BC, right? So we studied 1500, yeah, 500 BC. Around 500 BC, we have Maha established, like coming up of Mahajanapads. We'll just put it up here. 500 BC. I would also like I'd done a brief study, and I think this is when the kingdom of Magad and kingdom of Magad especially becomes very prominent in this period, 500 BC, and all of its um, three dynasties that ruled over that land. Magad is here. Anyway, so let's just move on. Ma- some of these are shown on map 4. Most Mahajan, yeah. So this means that huge walls and bricks were laid down. So let's look at the map now. Okay, so what do we see here? During at the upper northwestern region, we have Gandhara. Gandhara. At northern part itself, we have Kuru, and then below that we have Panchala. Right, we have Kosala. Down to that we have Magad and Anga, and to the left we have Avanti, Ujjain. What is striking about this particular map, if we look at it from from outside, like if you really look at this thing, what comes to my mind is that there has been this shift from the Indus. People had moved from that place and had moved towards the Ganga Yamuna region. Yes, and a little bit towards the center part, we have Avanti, right, Ujjain. So there has been this shift towards that region. And down below, I mean, in the southern region, we don't see anything at all. I don't know what was happening at that period of time in the southern region. I don't know that yet. I will try to find out. But what I think, or what I gather, is the fact that nothing too significant or nothing too big was there in the southernmost regions, or there wasn't a powerful empire or something of that sort in the southern region. Maybe local rulers were leading them, or maybe some things like that was just not existing. Maybe people, yeah, people definitely were there, but nothing of things which would make a lot of historical impact going on at the southernmost region. So a lot of the things are really going on over in the north because People were keeping historic records, and they were readily available and they were preserved well. So that difference is also there. It is very easily seen here. Yes, so let's move on. So forts were probably built because people were afraid of attacks from other kings. Yes, and yeah, there is also another thing that we can take away from this thing. Now, if there is rajas and rulers who are really establishing themselves as the person who is in control of the land, then obviously in all of these regions that are so congested by kingdoms and whatnot, they would definitely have conflicts with each other. They will definitely have fights between. I'm pretty sure this region, all of this area, especially Magad and Vaishali, all of these places would be having constant fights, constant battles, and that really goes to show these forts which are built, all of these this big walls that we see here, this guy sweeping, yeah, all of these places were definitely being attacked by different kings because they wanted to show their superiority. So forts were probably built because people were afraid of attacks from other kings and needed protection. It is also likely that some rulers wanted to show how rich and powerful they were by building really large, tall, and impressive walls. Yeah, it could also be, yeah, this could also be a thing, but it's not only for that purpose. I'm pretty sure it's also to protect them. Yeah, with that amount of, with such amounts of kingdoms being secluded in one particular place, attacks is just, I'm pretty sure attacks were there. Yeah. So it also showcases a person's power also if you build large structures like that. Also, in this way, the land and the people living inside the fortified area could be controlled more easily by the king. Yeah, so that is also another thing. If you seclude people together in one particular place, saying that this is our boundary, you are protected here, people will stay there for one reason. They will definitely stay there, and on top of that, they could be controlled by the king. Yes. So, building such huge walls required a great deal of planning. Thousands, if not lakhs, of bricks or stones had to be prepared. This in turn meant enormous labor provided possibly by thousands of men, women, and children, and resources had to be found for all of this. You need resources also to do all of these work, right? Yeah. The new Rajas now began maintaining armies. See, so now the Rajas had maintained armies, um, and a force was beginning to be created. Not just because the people wanted someone to rule them. Obviously, people wanted that, but now with the armies under the direct command of the king, things started changing. Soldiers were paid regularly. They became the kings were the ones who were providing the finances, providing the salary to the soldiers. Right? No, now there is a direct um, what do you say? A direct apprent. I think this here would be a fiduciary relationship between the king and its subject. Yes. Will it be fiduciary or will it be mm, master servant? Master servant is fiduciary. Yeah, so it is a fiduciary. I think it is a fiduciary relationship here. Not just that. I mean, the real thing here is the fact that the Raja is providing the money to the soldiers, regular salaries. Some payments were probably made using punch marked coins. So coins also started emerging at this period of time. So if we were to say when exactly coins and punch marked coins came into the picture, it would be late Vedic. Late Vedic period is when late Vedic or when kingdom of Magad and all were coming into picture. Late Vedic, not Magad itself. I mean, there are so many other Mahajanapads, right? Yeah, we'll read about that in chapter 8, right? List two ways in which the Rajas of the Mahajanapads were different from those mentioned in the Rig Veda. So we had already discussed about that. Yeah, taxes. As the rulers of the Mahajanapads were building huge forts, maintaining big armies, they needed more resources and they needed officials to collect these. So instead of depending on occasional gifts brought by people, as in the case of the Raja of the Janapads, they started collecting regular taxes. So there is a difference between the Raja of Janapads, and there is also a difference. There is a difference between the Raja of the Janapads and the Raja of Mahajanapads. So in Janapads, people would bring occasional gifts to the Raja to keep him happy. Maybe if the Raja wanted someone to gift him something, that's the thing. But in the case of Mahajanapads, uh, regular gifts, regular taxes were imposed so that they could build huge forts and maintain big armies. And so it's the form of, for maintaining or for funding its army and building forts and to secure the people itself. Good cause, good thing is what they would expect at that period of time. So people wouldn't really want to refrain themselves from not paying the taxes because those taxes are being used, if not in a corrupt way, for the welfare of the people only. Right, so good thing. Taxes on crops were the most important. This was because most people were farmers. Usually the tax was fixed at one sixth of what was produced. So, one sixth of what was produced belonged to the king. This was known as bhag or a share. So, one sixth of what was produced in the case of farmers. So, in the case of farmers, one sixth of what was produced belonged to the king. There were taxes on craftspersons as well. These would have been in the form of labor. For example, a weaver or a smith may have had to work for a day every month for the king. So every month they had to work one day for the king. So that's what craftspersons had to do. Work one day for the king in a month. Yeah. So herders were also expected to pay taxes in the form of animals and animal produce. Yeah, so depending on the chore, depending on the occupation, the people had to pay their taxes to the king, right? There were also taxes on goods that were bought and sold through trade. So maybe a percent of amount like now we have, yeah, in the present day also. So a percentage of the income generated or the profits made would belong to the king, something of that sort. Yeah, and hunters and gatherers also had to provide forest produce to the Raja. See, हाथ फैलाते हैं. See, this is the thing now. Now, if you don't have anything to do with people, if you have disregarded a particular sect of the people as untouchables or whatnot, but their produce is as important as any other person's. I mean, it's so wrong, it's so disgusting, you know. What a time. Anyway, what do you think would have been provided by hunters and gatherers? Lowly thing, and they would still accept it, right? That's the thing about all of these things. Hunters and gatherers, they would hunt and give and take and like animal skins, yes, things like that, which in normal sense they would say like, oh, these are things which are untouchable or produces of untouchable people or whatnot. And when they produce it to the king, they just gladly take it for whatever purposes. Disgusting. Anyway, changes in agriculture. There were two major changes in agriculture around this time. One was the growing use of iron plowshares. One was the growing use of iron plowshares. Yeah. So there is now a shift from wooden plowshares to iron plowshares. Not just that, the fact that iron was now coming into pictures. This is an important aspect here. Iron began to work. Iron began to be discovered. Kandahar was the place in Karnataka where, no, what was the name? What was the name? I had studied this. Not Kandahar. Kandahar is in Afghanistan. Um, I knew the name. Dharwad. Dharwad was the place. Dharwad in Karnataka was the place where iron was first. Yeah, it was Dharwad. I know this name because I was supposed to go here. I was supposed to go here, but nothing really happened. Anyway, so Dharwad is the place where iron was discovered in Karnataka. This meant that heavy clay soil could be turned over. Yeah, so iron's use. Yeah, it could easily um, get away with heavy clay soils. Could be easily turned over. Yeah, and it increased productivity. Second, people began transplanting paddy. This meant that instead of scattering the seed on the ground, plants would be sprouted and then the saplings would be grown. This led to increased production as many more plants survived. However, it was a backbreaking work. Generally, slave men and women, dasas and dasis, and landless agricultural laborers, kammakaras, 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 had to do this work. So basically, untouchables had to do this work. A closer look, Magad. Find Magad on map 4. It's in Bihar, right? Just for that sake, yeah. Here we have Magad here. There we go. That's Magad, right? So Magad became the most important Mahajanapad in about 200 years. So, in about 200 years, we were in 500 BC, 200 years ahead of that, I would say somewhere around 300. I had written 600 BC here, but I think the period which they are referring to right here, I think what they're referring to right here, obviously there were things going on during that period of 600 BC, 558 BC. Um, Things were going on, yes, but it isn't like the real thing. Oh, wait 1 minute. 300 BC would mean that in 320 BC we had Alexander and all of these people coming in. Yeah, so it's not 300 BC. It has to be this. It has to be 600 BC. During this period, I think, let's see, 1 second. It's best if we just. So 500 and Bimbisara. See, Bimbisara was a very very important ruler. Haryanka dynasty is where all of these things regarding Magad empire begins. So this cannot be overlooked. Bimbisara 558 BC, it will not go unnoticed. Yeah, so 200 years ago, this is correct. It is about 600 BC old, is what the book is trying to say. They will not overlook, NCERT will not overlook that period. It's not possible at all. Many rivers, such as the Ganga and Son, flowed through Magad. This was important for transport, water supply, making the land fertile. So, for all of these reasons, so parts of Magad were forested. Elephants which lived in the forest could be captured and trained for the army. So, elephants were being used in the army. Very important because elephants was one of the main reasons why Alexander's people, after invading through the Hindu Kush, didn't really want to move towards the eastern side of India because they were too afraid. They knew they would fail because Magad was that big by 300 BC when Alexander came in. We'll learn about that, sure. Elephants. So elephants were included in the training for army and all. So forests also provided wood for building houses, carts, and chariots. Besides, there were iron ore mines in this region that could be tapped to make strong tools and weapons. So Magad also was important for iron ore. Iron ore could have been one of the main reasons why Magad became so important because it gave them a lot of power with regard to stronger tools and weapons. Forging could have been really very powerful in the kingdom of Magad. Magad had two very powerful rulers. Here comes Bimbisara and Ajatasattu. Like this is Bimbisara is the father and Ajatasattu is his son. We'll read that. Anyway, so these two people came. They were very powerful rulers who used, and they belonged to the Haryanka dynasty. We can read it here. Magad Empire. The first dynasty, if you ask, which ruled Magad region was the Haryanka dynasty, and Bimbisara was the where is it? Bimbisara was the ruler. Yeah, son of Bimbisara. This is where I got that detail from. Yeah, let's move on. So, who used all possible means to conquer other Janapads? So, Bimbisara and Ajatasattu, they both tried to conquer all the other neighboring Janapads. Like I said, like there would have been constant fights here. It's very natural to think because they are all in close proximities and these are all big janpads, mahajanpads, right? So control and dominance is something which any king is the first rule in the book, I'd say. Anyway, so who used all possible means to conquer other janpads? Mahapadma Nanda was another important ruler. He extended his control up to the northwest part of the subcontinent, northwest back towards the region of Indus. Is that so? Or is it towards the Ujjain and Avanti that we saw? Anyway, whatever that thing is. But the fact remains that it was towards northeast. Northeast would mean that it's not Avanti and all. Probably move towards Avanti also, but northwestern part is the most important. Is the most important areas towards which this guy went. What's his name? Mahapadmananda. There's another minor detail about Mahapadmananda. He is considered as the historic ruler of India. No, what was that? Historic. Is it given here? I think it was given here. Mahapadma, first historic emperor of India. And Chandragupta Maurya was the first emperor of India. Is considered the first emperor of India. There's this thing about Chandragupta Maurya, right? So there was this. I was watching one Indus Valley Civilization documentary or something, and there was this foreigner who was referring to Chandragupta Maurya as Chandragupta Mauri. It's so funny, you know. Yeah, just so certain things about these Britishers and foreign people when they try to pronounce the names right. Chandragupta Mauri. Yeah. Anyway, let's just move on. The yeah In this page, if we were to think, then there are three important there's this like what all dynasties ruled over Magad empire. It is We have Haryanka dynasty, then it was followed by Shishunaga dynasty, and then we have the Nanda dynasty. These are the three dynasties that ruled over Magad empire. Nanda being the last, and it was taken over by Chandragupta Maurya. Yes, he was overthrown by Chandragupta Maurya, and then from there on, his empire begins. Yes, and that would probably be the end of the, like, the beginning of the medieval and the end of ancient by the end of Chandragupta Maurya's period, is what I think is regarded as the timelines and all. Anyway, we'll look into that. Not a big deal. Yeah, let's move on. Yeah, so Mahapadmananda is also an important character. We didn't read a lot about him first. Let me just. Yeah, so he was the first Nanda dynasty ruler, and he killed the last of the Shishunaga dynasty to succeed as the king. What else? 28 years, conquered many kingdom. Last Nanda ruler was Dhanananda. So only two Nandas? No, there were 8 or 9 sons of Mahapadmananda. Anyway, let's not delve too much into it. We are not required to study that as of now. Okay. But the main thing about Mahapadmananda is that he extended the rules towards the northwestern part. He further, so there has been a gradual extension of the kingdom of Magad towards all different parts. It was really very huge. The parts, we'll see that. It was really very huge, this whole kingdom. Probably we'll see it. If we don't, then we'll see it anyway sometime else. Anyway, the later the capital was shifted to, yeah. So yeah, Rajgriha, present day Rajgir, was, which is there in Bihar, was the capital of Magad for several years, and then from Rajgriha it shifted towards Patliputra in Patna. Right, so that was also another minor detail. So from Rajgriha, which was the first capital of Magad, to Patliputra. There had been the shift, it has been done by, um, I can't recollect the name. I think it is, that was also given here. Who shifted? We'll get it, but we'll have to spend more time, so let's not think about it right now. Anyway, so more than 2300 years ago, a ruler named Alexander. Now, this was 300 BC. 2300, let's just see if those things round up together. And here we had said it's 2500 BC. So 500 BC, and here, where is it? 2300, so a difference of 200 years. Yeah, and 200 years, 500 and 200 would mean 300, right? So this is correct. So 2300 years ago means it is 300 BC, correct? So this is 300 BC, and we have the invasion from Alexander. Not exactly 300 BC, it was 327 or something like that, but for a round of figure, I think 300 BC does fine. Okay, so Alexander the Great, he makes his conquest in capturing the whole world, and so, well, he almost succeeded, but he could not, right? So he came to the Indian subcontinent, and reaching up to the banks of River Beas, when he wanted to march further eastwards, his soldiers refused. They were scared, as they had heard that the rulers of India had vast armies of foot soldiers, chariots, and elephants. Correct. Yeah. So, in what ways were these armies different from those described in the Rig Veda? We had discussed this probably over and over again, so I don't think there's any point in discussing the same thing again. Right. A closer look. Vaji. While Magad became a powerful kingdom, Vajji, with its capital at Vaishali, Bihar, was under a different form of government known as Gana or Sangha. Gana and Sangha. In a Gana or Sangha, there were not one, but many rulers. There were many rulers in Gana or Sangha, and they ruled together. Sometimes, even when thousands of men ruled together, each one was known as a Raja. So each individual member of this Gan or Sangh will be a Raja. He is considered a Raja. Right. So these Rajas performed rituals together. So they performed rituals together. They also met in assemblies and decided what had to be done and how, through discussions and debate. Right. Something like a government, where we have a collection of people coming together and who are Rajas to discuss over the matter and settle things out. How things would be done, basically. If they were attacked by an enemy, they met to discuss what should be done to meet the threat. Obviously, women, dasas, and kamakaras, worthless people, didn't really have the opportunity to participate in assemblies like these. Right. So both the Buddha and Mahavira, about whom we will read in chapter 6, belonged to Ganas or Sanghas. So, yeah, well, it's a fact that both Buddha and Mahavira were. Um, I don't know about Mahavir, I haven't read about this character, but Buddha was from a Kshatriya background. Now, if Mahavir also belonged to a Gana, then obviously he was also a part of. He was also Kshatriya. Has to be, otherwise he wouldn't be, right. So he wouldn't be a part of the Gana or Sangha. So both Buddha and Mahavira belong to Ganas or Sanghas, and some of the most vivid description of life in Sanghas can be found in Buddhist books. There's a minor detail here. Wait, was there a detail which we had? This thing. The fortification wall at Kaushambi. This is a picture of remains of a wall made of brick found near present day Allahabad. A part of it was probably built about 2500 years ago. So 2500 years ago, meaning 500 or 600 BC, when the shift was going on, right? Yeah. Right, moving on. Where are we now? Can be found in Buddhist texts, yes. So this is an account of the Vajjis from the Digha Nikaya, a famous Buddhist book which contains some of the speeches of the Buddha. These were written down about 2300 years ago. Ajatasattu and the Vajjis. Buddha belonged to Gana, to the Gana of Buddha was also discussed. Where was it? Sure, it isn't here. Buddha belonged to the Gana named Sakya. I think, yeah, it's probably in the next chapter. Yes, here, Sakya. Yeah, we'll come to that the next chapter, not now. Right. So Buddha belonged to the Gana named Sakya, and what is interesting is the fact that he belonged to a government form that was that of a Gana or Sangh, right? And Ajatasattu was the supreme ruler, and so he wanted to attack on another one of these Gana, known as Vajji, right? Vajji, which was also a Gana. So Ajatasattu wanted to attack Vajis, and claim the dominance over them and all, right? So, but also there's this interesting fact that Ajatasattu um, was a disciple of Buddha. Can we say he was a disciple of Buddha? But the fact is that he asks for advices from Buddha. I mean, for a person, I don't understand the character. Why would he want to take advice from Buddha when he is destined over this fact that he has to prove his dominance, and Buddha has a completely different ideology with regard to life. Anyway, so this is an extract from that book. So Ajatasattu wanted to attack the Vajis. He sent his minister named Vassakara to the Buddha to get his advice on the matter, which I don't know why it would make any reason. Why would he want to get an advice from Buddha? Because Buddha would only, I'm pretty sure if, what would the Buddha say? Well, I completely do not understand what Buddha's ideology and things are, but he was a person who wanted people to find their own enlightenment by means of, um, you know, what was Buddha's main ideology? Just to feed my curiosity. Equality, liberty, and fraternity. Right action, help others, live honestly, don't harm living things, take care of the environment, right work. So these are the things which he came out of his own while he was being enlightened, right? When he was sitting down and really trying to figure out what should be the purpose of life and things like that. So, from a person like that, if you're going for an advice as to should you attack or not, what would be the obvious answer that you would get? Why did he even ask for the advice of Buddha in this particular case when his only intention was to attack and prove his dominance? It's not something which I would think was a necessary course. Maybe he just felt that it's good if you just go and take the advice of Buddha, probably just for the sake of knowing what his opinion is. Could be anything. Anyway, let's just see what the Buddha said. The Buddha asked whether the Vajis met frequently in full assemblies. When he heard that they did, he replied that the Vajis would continue to prosper as long as they held full and frequent public assemblies. They met and acted together, they followed established rules, they respected, supported, and listened to elders. Vaji women were not held by force or captured. Chaityas, local shrines were maintained in both towns and villages. Wise saints who followed different beliefs were respected and allowed to enter and leave the country freely. If there was a person who was more diplomatic than me, I think it would have been Buddha. What an answer! I mean, yeah, it's a very not the kind of advice which Ajatasattu would have wanted to hear from Buddha, I'm pretty sure. Anyway, let's not delve into that. No, I'm a very diplomatic person, by the way. But this blows my mind away. I think I should learn from the Buddha himself on how to be diplomatic. I'm just kidding. Anyway, in what ways was the Vajji Sangha different from the other Mahajanapads? Yeah, their form of governance is the main thing. Try and list at least three differences. Good Lord, three differences. Think about it. So, Vajjis, Sangha and Ganas, many rulers. There we only have one ruler. Here, they decide on matters together. That the decision is made by only one individual. And what else can you think? Gana or Sangha. Um, if we talk in terms of effectiveness, I would say that there could have been a lot of political turmoil when it comes to the Gana and Sangha, because not everyone would have been in conformity with one particular decision. So there could have been a lot of violence within the Sangha or Gana just because of political differences. But when it comes to the other one, there there's only one ruler, there's only one person who's imposing things, so he could not have been upset within his own kingdom with his councils or ministers. If it was the case, then probably it was because of the person's own incapacity to rule or lead. Yes, that's what I think. Anyway, rajas of powerful kingdoms tried to conquer the Sangha, right? Nevertheless, these lasted for a very long time, till about 1500 years ago, when the last of the Ganas or Sanghas were conquered by the Gupta rulers, about whom you will read. 1500 would mean 1500 would mean, if you subtract 2000 from this, then you would live, you are 500 AD ho jayega. So it was there till 500 AD, the relevance of these Sanghas and Ganas, meaning that in medieval India also these things existed, and they had to go through constant fights and all. I don't really know exactly who this Gupta ruler is, but I'm pretty sure it's not Chandragupta Maurya. I think it is. There was another Gupta. Now, I don't know who that Gupta is, but I think that's the Gupta which this here is here they're trying to say. Anyway, we'll find that out later in chapter 10 anyway. Elsewhere, find Greece and Athens in your atlas, good lord. No. Around 2500 years ago, the people of Athens set up a form of government which was called a democracy, which lasted for about 200 years. All free men over the age of 30 were recognized as full citizens. There was an assembly that met at least 40 times a year to decide on important matters. All citizens could attend these meetings. Appointments for many positions were made through lottery. All those who wanted to be chosen gave in their names, and then some were selected through lottery. Citizens were expected to serve in the army and the navy. However, women were not considered citizens. Women were not considered citizens. Also, many foreigners who lived and worked in Athens as merchants and craftspersons did not have rights as citizens. Besides, there were several thousand slaves in Athens who worked in mines, fields, households, and workshops. They too were not treated as citizens. A very rudimentary form of a governance, government system, uh, a democratic system, a very rudimentary form, but it's still a democracy because people were elected, if not if through by means of lottery, but at least it's not in the form of hereditary or lineage or things like that. So, a very rudimentary form of governance through democracy. It's just too hard writing like this. We know what I just said. Okay, so I'll just write R. Good lord, now that's bad. Let's make a good R for rudimentary form of democracy. Where did we see that? That's in Athens, Greece. Hmm. That's in Athens, Greece. So probably, do you think this was true democracy? No, it was not. It was obviously not. That's why I just said it's a rudimentary form of governance through democracy. Yeah. So, but what's yeah, a rudimentary form of governance through democracy. So I think the first democratic, not true, but the first democratic um, country would have been Greece. In this way, if the option is there, then what would you choose? A perfect form of democracy, but what is a perfect form of democracy? You can never be so certain about that particular term because It could be quite an elaborate definition, and nothing would um, give a proper meaning to the term, right? So it wasn't true democracy, but if you say democracy, then yes, it was a rudimentary form of democracy. So first democratic nation, Greece, maybe not. By the way, what does the internet say about first democratic country? Greece? Is it Greece? Quora could have been. Yeah, let's see Quora. Come on. Coined by Greeks. Athens. Which reached its golden age around 430 BC. Nice. That was when the things there was also taking place, right? The first democracy. So Greeks termed the word ruled by the people. Hmm. इंडिया का जो ये बता रहा है, आई थिंक ही इज रेफरिंग टू द गण और संघा. Yeah, I think that is what he is trying to imply here, but we didn't name it as democracy. But in Gana or Sangha also, it isn't a true form of democracy. But which came first? Can we say India was the one? No, I don't think so. Continuously functioning democracy is more hotly contested. Iceland, the Faroe Island, and the Isle of Man all have local parliaments founded in the 9th and 10th centuries, when Vikings pillaged, plundered, and set up legislative bodies on the sea islands of far northern Europe. 930 AD. Native American Six Nations Confederacy. Native American Six Nations Confederacy. Iroquois. Hmm. Yeah, so that's that. Nothing much of a solid answer there. Anyway, let's move on. So imagine you're peeping through a crack in the walls of the assembly of Vaishali, where a meeting is in progress to discuss ways to deal with an attack by the king of Magad. Describe what you might hear. Setting of traps, um, cutting off strategies, no, cutting off the resources of the people, no, cutting off the resources of the king of Magad so that the empire suffers and the army is weakened, and then and counterattack on Magad. king, king of Magad. Yeah, just thinking like why not? I'm pretty sure things like this would have been discussed at that period of time. Um, I don't know much about warfare, but I know this fact that if there is an army, the the way to completely destroy the army is just cutting off the resources. And once you cut off the resources, gradually the army becomes weak, and when that's the situation, you launch a counterattack and you finish the deal. Not always applicable. When you talk about Magad, it is such a big empire that He had people everywhere. So it wouldn't have been the wisest of opinions anyway. This tactic is usually used when there is an army from a different nation which is invading into. Maybe this would have been the situation with. This would have been the kind of discussion happening in the ruler of the Magad's court. In the king's court, this would have been discussed. How to completely annihilate the Ganas and Sanghas. Yeah, I'm pretty sure they would have decided on things like this. No wonder why they didn't survive. Yeah, we'll read about that, yes. I don't know exactly what happened to Ganas and Sanghas. Uh, yeah, so we'll figure that out in the coming chapters. Anyway, so I think we have had a good comprehensive understanding of this chapter, and therefore we can close this and then begin with the next chapter. Maybe I'll record tomorrow now. I've been doing 3 chapters today, so maybe I'll stop here.